Live. All right. Now we just have to make sure we don't have the reverb. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I've gotten the stream started and just trying to make sure that it doesn't have the echo. I was doing a live stream earlier today and there was a weird looping echo. So let's see.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard anything on my end so far.
Oh, this one's fine. Yeah. Okay, good. Yay. Well, here we
Yeah,
are.
and this was the here. Yeah, here we are.
How are you?
Good. It's a rough day at work, but work day's over, so now we get to do some VR stuff.
Oh, yeah. Remind me, if you're comfortable, what do you do for work?
Oh, I work at a company called Walters Kluwer that does safety software rollouts, like enterprise level.
Oh, wow.
Really big organizations, like hundreds of thousands of users.
Gosh. Yeah. So the kind of tight deadline or disasters went wrong or
Yeah, a little bit of that, every day. But the rewarding part is just everybody propping themselves up and getting the yeah. I mean, that's the fun thing about working in IT is you're really in a position to like help people daily.
yeah. Yeah, I just showed your world off and the Star Trek world to a mentor of mine. And I was like, I think this is a new recipe in the World Creator book because they're a professional environmental designer, and I was like, I've been to hundreds of worlds and multiple apps with him, and I was like, I don't think I've ever felt anything like I feel in this world. This is different, and it was, and then we were like, he was like, "Oh yeah, what does this person do?" And I was like, "I don't know. How do I not know that?" Like, I need to find out. Yeah, what kind of daily inspiration makes somebody create a space quite like this? So, yeah. Um,
You are so kind.
of course. I mean, it's
Appreciate
interesting
it.
world. I like I like worlds that it's kind of like you can go to McDonald's and you know what you're going to eat and it's going to have the same flavors every time and there's reliability there. But you can also go to there's these restaurants that you go to and you never know what you're going to get and some of the flavors don't really burst or work until you've chewed on them for a long time. And yours has a mix of like that initial glow but also that sense of got to really let it like blend in me to kind of find the words to capture what's happening here. And it's I like worlds I can chew on and not figure out so quickly. They have subtle medicine in them. Yeah.
Well, I'll let you in on two secrets. First might be that I don't really have a gaming background, so most of what I build like doesn't have any kind of fundamental like gaming design approach. And the second is I'm very limited in like what I have learned how to do. So like I have just the basic primitive Legos, like the 1 block, 2 block, 4 block. So everything is really, really super simple. Hey, Carl. Hey, welcome.
I'm setting up Discord now.
Oh, sweet. Is it in the gated stage? That was the one that I put up on the screen.
It's the just regular Bridgemaker stage.
Okay, let me point it at that one because I think I put it at the wrong one. I'll be right back.
Question though, but yeah, no, this one is everybody can come. I'm gonna share screen. Your chat. Oh, hey Carl.
Hello.
Hello. Okay.
Gotta figure out where I want to sit. Gotta find the perfect patch of grass.
I know. Last week I was sitting on the ground and thinking, I feel like it's a park. We need little blankets or something to picnic and look at all of this. Okay. Going to on the ground. There we go. Yay. All right. We should be up and going in multiple places. Yay. ScottScott's back.
I believe I have that corrected now, so thank you for correcting me on which chat it was in. I think we're in the right spot now.
Of course. Yeah, I'm glad we
and
got that.
Hi, Bonnie.
Yay.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Hello.
Hey, Rick rolled. Oh, this is a new fresh avatar. Really cool. Wow.
Isn't this the one Rain was wearing? The cat? Or is this new? Very, are you meowing? It looks like you're meowing, but we can't hear you. I can't. Can everyone hear Rick? Rick. Oh. Oh, look, you can pet its
Not
ears.
yet.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I'm totally the kid at the park.
I'm on my iPad. I can't see anyone's avatars properly. There are so few avatars on iOS.
Oh, I see.
iOS. Oh, wow.
Yeah, Scott is a robot for me. Rick Roll is on his second avatar. The one where, yeah.
iOS.
I see your avatar. It's pretty.
Which avatar?
Nice. Mine's iOS compatible? Hell yeah.
I see, and Carl, I see both of them, but yeah, I like the colorful.
Nice.
Yeah, you are a robot and I can't see you, or can't hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear Rick either. Yeah. So Rick, I'm not sure what's up with your mic.
Oh.
I know Rick rolled is...
Maybe not.
I know he has the newer Quest 3, and that at times I remember there's been audio issues. So but we love that avatar. It's so expressive and animated.
I love the cat running around. Oh, see, look. I pet the cat.
It's too
you
much.
Can see the ears are moving. That's really fun. Oh. But we can't hear you, Rick. Even your meows. Oh, look at that. Look at
and welcome,
picture.
Sim.
Yeah, Sim's here.
Well, we can go ahead and get things started too. Excited about today's event, and thanks everybody for coming. Looks like we got the streams up, so anybody that might be on YouTube or Discord or we're looking out for anything you might have to say too, so welcome on that side of town. And welcome to another event of The Body Keeps the Score, our ongoing book review, this time diving into chapter 1.
Oh, sorry, one more thing, Scott, I apologize.
Sure.
I realized that we did this for the music hop last night and I liked it, and I just realized you and I did this wrong here. that's the stage chat, and maybe we should have it in the actual event chat for the Body Keeps the Score, so then people can go up and see their responses later. Because on the stage chat,
Oh,
it'll just fade out after the next event. It'll be hard to capture. So
it'll evaporate. Gotcha. Oh, no, that's quite all right.
It'll be hard to track. So yeah, this might be better in the long run because people will share some cool things in the chat, I'm sure. Yeah. So I can send you the link
let's
to the event if you'd like right now, so you can put it in there.
Oh, sure. I believe if I duck out for just a moment here, I can sort of aim it. I'll hop right back in when that's set up.
Oh yeah. Well, it's just let me share the post with you. Copy link, and then I'll just send it in here. Apologies, everyone. Trying to get this set up better. Okay, I sent it in your ticket. There we go. Oh, wait, is that mine? Oh, you have streaming too. Cool. OBS is getting a workout tonight.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. If anybody goes to the stream in Discord, they'll probably naturally be in the stage chat. So maybe if you spam the stage chat with a link to here, they'll find us.
Good idea. Thank you. We'll do that.
Cool. So yeah, hello to anybody that might be on the stream. Also welcome, and want to kind of start out the presentation with a big thank you for coming and spending the time. I'm so happy to see everybody, and VR for me has always kind of been a healing journey. It just feels super comfortable in here, and I love the rich connections and friendships. So all this time that we get to spend together, these presentations are just an excuse to hang out, really. So thanks for devoting your time. And, a few norms, since we are talking about a pretty powerful topic, just to keep the space comfortable for everyone, we want to mention, that this isn't therapy. We talk a lot about therapeutic concepts that come out of the book and things that we've individually experienced. But we don't want anyone to kind of come away from this event feeling like we've given an answer to something, because you definitely want to get those definitive answers from medical professionals, and we're just a peer group here of like wellness enthusiasts, sharing what wisdom we might have. So, please take everything with a grain of skepticism, to a professional if it really hits something and you want to explore. And please, no fixing and advising. We can share some personal details in here, and it might be someone's first times, like exploring, vulnerability and explaining something that happened. And it can, be a real, unintended consequence if we sort of pounce on them and say like, oh, I've dealt with that and here's what you do. So just make some space for, what people have to say, and kind of let it breathe. But if you do want feedback, if you are looking for nuggets of wisdom, just mention that. Like, hey, I'm open. Or maybe you have a question. I have a question. I'd love some feedback. Also practice I and you statement hygiene, something like I feel what I heard, or this is the way I feel about something is much better than, you said this, or you said that. When we're in a sensitive space, that can feel threatening sometimes. So that's a really good practice. And confidentiality, of course, anything anybody comes to me with, I'm never going to, share that outside of our conversation. But just be aware that we are streaming. So there are, eyes on our discussion from outside. And, there is, recording capabilities in VR chat. I've kind of gotten to the point where I just always assume like somebody somewhere is recording if you're in a space with people. So, but I kind of don't tend to really hold back, no real secrets here. So it's always good for me, but I just want you to be aware and have a comfort level with confidentiality of anything that you share. We have a raise hand feature up in the corner there. There's a little squirrel icon that you can click to put your hand up. I'll kind of watch if anybody has like a share they'd like to bump in with. Feel free to raise a hand. And we do have open discussion at the end of the presentation, which is like my favorite part. The presentation is really just context for thoughts from the community once we get to open discussion. And if you have any, thoughts during the week, when we're not actively in VR, there is an ongoing discussion thread in the Bridgemakers Discord, which is up on the screen there. So any kind of chat we might have, or questions, or just fun little things that you want to share, the Discord's a nice place for that. So just want to mention it. Diving into chapter 1, some really deep topics, like right out of the gate. And the very first one I'm noticing, and it's kind of like a personal opinion of mine, is, when I was growing up, most of the talk about like traumatic experiencing, or what we now know as PTSD, really came out of this kind of combat veteran experience, like an exclusive sort of, if you had PTSD, it was from, having survived a war zone. And I think it's actually just kind of a timing thing where right around the time that PTSD studies really became like a thing in academic circles and professional circles, it was right around the time that Vietnam soldiers had returned from overseas and had, been here 3 to 5 years or so. And, we're starting to display those symptoms of, difficulty relating and flashbacks. So I think that sort of created the synergy between, the mental wellness spaces and, the patients, being largely people that were returning from war. And it sort of created this ether of everything trauma related is about being, a soldier, which of course is true, but, also, as we'll go through some of the slides here, is true in other cases as well. And in Dr. Vanderkolk's dedication for this book, we recall he dedicated it to his patients, and one of the patients who he names as Tom in the first chapter, very vulnerably describes like some of these experiences that he's having where, these kinds of fits of rage where, you end up punching like a hole in the wall before you've, thought about it. You've already done it. And I think that's a picture, if you grew up in a household, with somebody that had difficulty controlling their temper and had fits of rage, that's probably a very emotional picture, to even see, because, we remember exactly what that experience is like. alcohol and drug use to kind of numb the feelings or help with sleep, kind of like a self-medicating. This can be like another symptom of PTSD, which Tom described. And another one that I was really glad came up too is this kind of like recklessness of, getting on the motorcycle and driving down the road at like these ludicrous speeds. Like he told Dr. Vanderkolk that actually helped him calm down, and like, it sort of snapped his body, back into a state that felt more comfortable. And if you've ever ridden a Harley or any kind of motorcycle that has a V-twin, there's these two giant pistons that kind of fire in this like asymmetrical way. So like the bike like really shakes, especially when you rev it. And that motion of that shaking can actually go into the body and sort of help calm it. So it's no surprise to me that he described, riding the motorcycle at high speeds as this kind of calming feeling. And another thing that Tom describes, which comes up a lot now in trauma studies, is intergenerational trauma. Tom discussed memories of his father having fits of rage as well, and it got Dr. Vanderkolk thinking back on his family history, where, his father and his uncle, having survived, World War II circumstances, also had these like fits of rage and breaking things and talking, down to their children in ways that left these lasting impressions. And, Dr. Vanderkolk's mom, anytime he asked questions about the past, she would actually physically faint. So obviously some stuff there too. And what we're going to learn in this book is that these traumas can kind of be like inherited through generational, proximity to one another. And, that's one of the beautiful things that I think we're doing here is this pursuit of wellness is kind of like breaks the cycle, like you're saying like, it's going to stop with me, instead of, involuntarily or unknowingly kind of continuing to pass it on through our relationships. And Rorschach tests came up. I don't know why, but these just have such a like curiosity to me. The concept of like having this ink blot and asking, to describe what it is that comes up. And I never realized, like, I always kind of took it as like a wink, wink, nod, nod, but I never realized like how useful they actually are until I read what Dr. Vanderkolk had to say. That it sort of gives the therapist like this idea of like how your mind like comes to imagery. So really, no matter what you say, it's like has some telling qualities, and I found that surprising because I was always like, just what can you get from somebody describing what they think this might be here. And one of the heartbreaking parts of this chapter, and there was many parts that, really kind of go into your core and you're just like, oh, that really hurts, was that trauma really kind of inhibits your use of imagination, where if you're in a kind of a triggered traumatic state, like one of the things your body shuts down is the parts of your brain that enrich imaginative feelings. And imagination is key to healing, because we have to imagine if we're going to head for some kind of change, we have to imagine like what does that change look like. And also like the ability to play. Dr. Vanderkolk said that if he tried to take the Rorschach session into like playful area, when people were traumatically triggered by the imagery, they often wouldn't respond to play either, which is just heartbreaking to think that when we enter these triggered states, our whole demeanor and ability to think is changed with it. And the nightmares, something that I can personally relate to is these nightmare experiences that Tom described, which he never really went into detail, but like just the fact that he was having difficulty with nightmares. And I did a lot of personal work on this myself, where I was starting to try to go to bed early enough to know that I would have really vivid dreams with like this intention that I'm going to approach, the dream sort of in this attempt at lucidity, to kind of explore like what's going on in the dream. And I found out what most of my dreams are kind of like two circumstances that there's this expectation on me that I have to get or find something, and I spend like most of the dream just searching for the thing. And, eventually even like forgetting what I'm searching for, but still like actively in this process of searching where it feels like people are like standing over me, like waiting for me to find it. And, another one is just the classic like monster, being chased by this threatening presence. And, one time I actually had the lucidity enough to actually turn around, and I touched this giant like T-Rex on its snout. It was like the first time I turned like into what was chasing me, and then it broke into 5 like little monsters. And it sort of overwhelmed me at that point. So like I'm trying out dream journaling and this idea of lucidity and dreaming to sort of try to get a little bit of more control back of the dreams, because when you have a history of trauma, your dream can be impacted by that, and then you wake up having had a stressful dream and you're sort of waking up in a state of exhaustion, which then takes you further down the territory where trauma just really impacts your daily life. So this is something I'm really actively working on. So when nightmares came up, that was kind of what it made me think about in terms of traumatic experiencing. And also functioning through trauma, this is one of the things that makes it so hard to get help from peers, to live like so much of our lives with the secret, struggle that's happening in the background. Is you can outwardly present as this functioning, successful like person in society, where, we heard about Tom's struggles with rage and alcoholism and relating to his family and passing out on the couch, yet he's a successful attorney that's like going into court every day and arguing these cases, successfully. And, even working in and of itself can become a coping mechanism where we sort of replace the priorities of work like over our own, and it can numb, the feelings of pain by just like making ourselves super busy. And, you kind of learn to just put on this mask and put the traumatic feelings aside and just replace your goals with like this other thing. And yeah, I think this might be one of the last insights from Tom's experience in Chapter 1. But another heartbreaker is this idea of avoidance of treatment. Dr. Vanderkolk uncovered these really reluctant feelings for Tom to get help, because he had lost his friends in Vietnam to a very shocking, moment where, suddenly he was surrounded by friends, and then he was the last one left alive, and he sort of feels like he became this monument to their lives. Like he was like this living testament to the event that happened to his friend, and he had these feelings of deserving to be the one that suffered, in that memory. And this can be something to really overcome when you start taking a pathway to wanting to heal, is these ideas of deserving it. You can have internal struggles about about, deserving compassion or being even allowed to be in a space with people who are helpful. And, another foundational book in my journey was No Future Without Forgiveness by Desmond Tutu. And one of the many concepts in that book was like forgiveness of self. One of the people like we have to learn to forgive is ourself. And, forgiveness is a whole nother topic. You're not necessarily saying something was okay. You're just deciding that thing is going to have like less power emotionally and sort of steering yourself towards a place of processing and reconciliation. But the question that it led to for Dr. Vanderkolk was like, how do these horrific experiences like sort of get locked into our memories, like almost like it creates this timeline where everything that happens forward, you just sort of stay in this like timeline of when that thing happened. And, you can kind of tell how brilliant Dr. Vanderkolk is with like how much he really wants to help. He saw this giant waiting list at the Veterans Affairs of people trying to get treatment and just not enough doctors. So he organized group therapy where at least people could get some kind of help as they were waiting to get seen by these few doctors that they had. And, one of the things Dr. Vanderkolk learned in that experience is they would often bring uniforms for him, or they bring like the standard issue GI watch. And he really felt it was demonstrating this kind of you're in or you're out mentality where, trauma can be an isolating experience where you find you can only relate, to other people who can understand that something like that can happen, and it can be difficult to be around people that, have that either support that brought them back, or maybe they haven't had those slips and falls, yet in life, and it can be really difficult to relate because our nervous systems are attuned differently. So Dr. Vanderkolk goes on to talk about how, he's recognizing all of these habits and behaviors, and he's seeing that he feels like it's body related. So he hits the books and he goes to the VA library and he finds there's not a single book on like wartime shell shock or, war neurosis or battle fatigue, all these older terms that describe PTSD. So, I mean, if you just stop and think about that for a moment, this is in like the 1980s in the Veterans Affairs Hospital. They don't have a single book that describes, coming back with these symptoms. But he did go to the Harvard Library, the Harvard Medical Library, and he found this book called The Traumatic Neurosis of War by Abram Kardiner. And in that book, it said the nucleus of the neurosis is a physioneurosis. And he said, aha, somebody else came to this conclusion that it has a body component. So naturally, in his findings, he made a petition to the Veterans Affairs to be able to study the condition, which had officially become a diagnosable condition of PTSD back in 1980. And this was his response for the Veterans Affairs. It has never been shown that PTSD is relevant to the mission of the VA. And I can't think of a more damning statement for the Veterans Affairs, other than, basically there's no potential damage to someone's, mind or nervous system after they return from a war zone. And, what I find so interesting to note about this is just the timing. This is like 1980, like Family Ties was on TV. This wasn't like I Dream of Jeannie or Gomer Pyle. Like, age. This was like when we were growing up. This is just a couple of decades ago. Not ancient history. So and growing up, there's been this sort of ramp to these conditions and how to treat them and that they even exist. And, we're kind of breaking the ground now where I think it's becoming more commonplace. And there's more like familial knowledge and just knowledge in general about it. So Dr. Vanderkolk ultimately quit the VA, which is, a bummer for all the soldiers that he was managing to help, but he just couldn't get anywhere with furthering the research that was needed to actually do treatment. So he left and went to the Harvard, Massachusetts Mental Health Center. And here he experienced a whole nother flavor of trauma, which is like familial abuse type trauma, where, someone had terrible experiences with, a parent or a family member. And he found himself thinking that after reading all of these books on psychiatry and seeing these statistics, like these books, and this was back in 1980, only 40 years ago, these books said, cases of incest are very rare, one case in every million women. And Dr. Vanderkolk had a study group of 100 women, half of which had experienced some form of incest. And he's asking himself, if we're talking one in every 1 million women, like how are 50 women and 100 in this group? So he started tearing down these, statistical inaccuracies about how often this kind of stuff happened. But even more shockingly, that book on psychiatry went on to say, furthermore, there's little agreement about the role of father-daughter incest as a source of psychopathy. And like, excuse me, but what? If you really think about what that says, it's like, a little bit of incest really isn't that bad. It's just, this was a psychology book that was teaching people how to treat traumatic experiences. So Dr. Vanderkolk knew there was a lot of work that had to be done, and he also connected the commonality between, wartime PTSD and things like childhood and familial PTSD. And, one of the things I always think to myself about the idea of deserving support, in parallel with a combat veteran, like how do you set what you've experienced next to somebody who's seen something as horrific as war? And I think if you went to that person and you tell them, the one person that was supposed to protect me in this world is the one that hurt me, like that combat veteran's going to have to take a knee, right? Because how horrific is it that the person, you're born into this world to is the one that ultimately gave you this pain to carry. And I think, in that light, that combat war veteran would see you as a peer. And there's been incredible work done in the space of childhood developmental PTSDs. And there's this group that has a test, and the test is called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiencing. And there's basically a test that asks you like a series of questions, and it's a really simple test. You get like points. And basically how many points you collect on that test, gives you a score of how, your childhood ranked in terms of, collecting PTSD type memories. So this can be like another eye-opening exercise to do where, PTSD inherently gives us these resistances of deserving and also validating, for ourselves that we have, some type of experience that qualifies, and here's a very objective test that's backed by all kinds of science. If you're interested, there's a wonderful TED Talk by Nadine Burke-Harris, who, one of those people you could just listen to for hours, has a YouTube talk about it. And also the founder of the ACEs study, one of the founders, Vincent Felitti, is actually credited in the beginning of the book where he left like a glowing review for Dr. van der Kolk about how groundbreaking his research can be. So, there's a very small circle here of people working and advocating in this space. It's very interconnected. So some conclusions. Dr. van der Kolk has some really nice statements towards the end of the chapter that I kind of spelled out verbatim here, but it starts out as, trauma's not just the experience of what happened. So like you had a bad experience and the advice is just get over it. It's not about, something that just happened, came and went. It's this imprint that it leaves on the mind, brain, and body. So it's not what happened. It's not the experience. It's not how much time it's been. It's how did it cook into your body. And it causes this fundamental reorganization of the way mind and brain manage perception, how we see the world, how we take in information, not only how we think and what we think about, but the literal capacity to think at all. Being highly triggered in a traumatic state can actually completely change your ability to think. And I'm thinking back to that hole that we saw in the drywall, like earlier, that picture where somebody had punched a hole in the wall. That wasn't thinking. That was mindless action that the body took because it was experiencing a traumatic event. And treatments, validation is not necessarily enough. Of course, validation helps. You want parental figures to say, I recognized something happened. You love friendships, kind of advocating for, I can see something happen there, but it's not the only component to moving forward. Even talk therapy, talk therapy is a wonderful treatment, and I've learned so much from it. But as Dr. van der Kolk says, it's sort of this collective exercise of all these different things to do what he says next here, which is we need a physical reduction in the hormonal echoes of traumatic experience. So I think what he's saying here is that you need to find a way to kind of calm the body back into this sort of normal state of, I'm not having to watch my environment. I'm not having to scan, be hypervigilant, but I just can exist freely in this space. How do we guide our body's hormonal state and chemical balance towards that feeling of safety and comfort? For real change to take place, the body needs to learn the trauma has passed. It's really difficult to heal from trauma, while the trauma is actually occurring. This is one of those reasons, it's so important to kind of get out of the traumatic experiencing situation, which of course is not always possible. A lot of times there's many barriers to moving away from it. But you can set an intention, right? And you can feel like you deserve help, and you can feel like you can talk about it. Understanding the process of healing is equally important to understanding how our mind works. I thought this was a really profound statement, this isn't just the study of how trauma occurs or how it gets into our body, but we're trying to understand how do you heal from it. And that's like the reason that I really like this book, is it has like a healing focus as well. And one of the points of feedback from last event was that we kind of talked a lot about the science of trauma, but we didn't really share any like nuggets of, how do you manage trauma if you do have a history. So I thought I would share like one of my personal ones to kind of lighten the topic, which is the bear in the box method. And how this works is, pretend that you're like throughout life, you're just always carrying this bear in a box. And the bear has absolutely no visibility to the outside world. It's in the box and it can't really see what's going on. And the bear can also remember like how something felt, but it has no concept of like when it happened. Like the bear doesn't know yesterday, tomorrow, 10 minutes from now, or 60 years ago. It has no concept of that. It just is always attuned to like what's happening in this moment. And it has all these threads of memories of like how things feel. So if you were in this giant car accident where your car like literally flipped and did, tumbles down the road and was practically destroyed, and you got airbags in your face and you're sore and it's loud and there's smoke, people are knocking on the window, the bear has no idea like what happened. It just knows hurt, loud, stink. That this is like super uncomfortable, and it like imprints on the bear. Like the bear is like, this is the new like top level of bad, and it sort of like sticks in the bear's like conscience. And what happens is now that the bear that you're carrying around in this box like knows that life can get that scary and that bad, it sees it or it feels it like everywhere. So like Jennifer Lawrence like tripping up the stairs to collect her Oscar, like the bear's like, oh my God, is it happening again? Did we just get in that really bad, stinky, loud thing? And it just ratchets everything up. And, when the bear's loud, you can't ignore it. So you have to kind of pay attention to it. And, sometimes the bear can drive you. If you're not careful, the bear like drives you around. So, think of like hitting a speed bump. Once again, that this bear's like, oh my God, like I felt this rattle. Like, did we just do that thing again? And, you kind of see where I'm going. Like when somebody pushes one of those carts into the cart return area, like isn't that like the loudest thing that can possibly happen? Like I swear it's like Mount Krakatoa level when you push those carts together. So like that noise, just the noise alone can trigger that bear to be like, oh, it's happening again. So what I try to advocate for this like theory of the bear in the box is like, it's our duty to sort of comfort, that bear. Like when we trip up the stairs and kind of like laugh at ourselves for doing it because we literally tripped up the stairs. The bear doesn't know that it was harmless, but our like reasoning centers, our higher functioning brain knows that there's no danger. It was just a silly slip. So you want to take that knowledge and you want to take that back to the bear and say, everything's all right. This isn't that thing that you're worried about, and what kind of things might you do to do that? Would you like sing to the bear? Would you rock it? Would you maybe like sit down for a second and just take a pause and let the bear like collect itself? Because it's just in a box. It doesn't know what's going on. So all it knows is, oh, things are stable now. Doesn't feel like the earth is shaking like it was just a moment ago. So, maybe this wasn't something to freak out about. Keep that bear hydrated, right? Keep that bear fed. All of these things, like let that bear sleep. all of those things that kind of go into just being prepared when something does go off kilter, that you don't allow the bear to think this is the worst thing that's ever happened all over again. And this can be like a methodology to just try to take out into, driving in traffic or being at the grocery store or having a difficult conversation. Just remember that cute little bear with a bow tie, like in a box, and how do I comfort that, like before I take on what's coming next. And just a quick little inspirational quote. There is no timestamp for trauma. There isn't a formula that you can insert yourself into to get from horror to healed. Be patient, take up space, and let the journey be the balm. And I just love that because it really underscores that healing from traumatic experience is really a journey. It's not something you just click on or off like a light switch. And if all you've done so far is set an intention, you've already partly healed. It's as simple as that. So yeah, thank you for all of your attention on today. I'll just invite anybody in the group that might have a hand raise. I really also want to hear and would love to hear what you think about Chapter 1 as well. So yeah, we got Carl up on the board first. Excited to hear what you might have to say.
All right.
Oh, I lost your voice there. Oh, I'm not hearing Carl. Is anyone else hearing Carl?
All right. Sorry. Yeah, no, sorry. I decided to disconnect again. So
Gotcha.
We're good. We're audible. All right.
Loud and clear.
Well, that ruined where I was trying to hold my thought. There was a couple thoughts I had about the first chapter, and I'll try to go for the first one that comes back to me here. I think the biggest thing that struck me was the
Yeah, a little bit of a headset pause there, so
to me here.
We can.
I think the biggest thing that struck me was the.
Oh no, he's in a loop.
All right. So, okay, if that happens again, go ahead and move on for me. But
Okay.
I'll try to get it out here. It usually only happens like once a week or so. I gotta replug my dongle. But okay, so in the first chapter, you kind of touched on it, but the going from, he was talking about, I mean, John, the soldier, the veteran, and he was kind of talking about how at the time they did not, take that trauma seriously. They didn't, like you said, the quote about PTSD not being their mission and everything. And then he got into the numbers of like, well, how many veterans were, going through this. And then it kind of almost seemed like a hard left turn of a subject change of going into the, women's trauma. And like, I almost took the comment, there was a comment where it was almost seemed like they said that, that when incest happens with women, that it's probably like character building almost, is how I took the comments they made, that like it shows that it's, potentially preparing them for, and it was crazy. But then he started talking about the amounts, and like you said, it was highly unlikely that he would have, half of the women in the country by their statistics were sitting in his room who had gone through that. But then he compared those numbers and kind of brought it back around, and it really like blew my mind. It was like like a setup, like an intentional rug pull of, well, we're starting to realize that these veterans are, needing help, and this is a serious issue. Oh, well, it turns out that, we have, I don't remember the exact numbers, but, it turns out we have 100,000 veterans that need this help. Oh, there's actually, 1 million women who have probably gone through similarly traumatic experiences that need addressed, So I thought that was a very great way to kind of highlight the where the focus lies, because I feel we have a lot of that where we give imbalanced focus to things that seem, important, and I'm sure they probably are important, but then there's other things that are like the same problem but worse, but we just accept it. So I really like seeing that stuff highlighted.
Yeah, thank you for advocating for that balance, which I think was what a lot of the groundbreaking researchers like Dr. Van der Kolk helped facilitate, was that there's a lot of focus on these extreme situations, but there's also this stuff going on in our households, in people's own homes, that also needs to address, and kind of stamping out those statements what doesn't kill you can make you stronger, that kind of old school, mentality that just, has really no place in these circumstances. And I just really wanted to say thanks for bringing a highlight to that there's so much supportive need in that space.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else got thoughts? I got one of my other ones came back, but I don't want to just keep going.
Oh, no, well, no hands on the board yet, so there's lots of space for it if there's another talking point.
Kind of, you touched on it again there. The other big thing to me that I'm kind of expecting we'll go more into and explore later in the book, but we've talked about this in previous Bridgemakers events when we were kind of being introspective, but it really highlighted to me the as much as the mental health profession has come around, that mentality of, like you said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, just grin and bear it, just, go to work, do what needs doing mentality, is still very much alive in the individual, especially. I mean, even with the show Sort of, we were talking about the father in that show, and the way he doesn't talk to his family about his issues, and so I'm guilty of that myself, so I'm looking forward to kind of having that thought process criticized, and maybe encourage myself to potentially open up in some ways.
Yeah, I try to practice that at work a little bit too, because one of the common things I'll notice in conversation is minimizing. There's a complaint about something that's not working quite right, but then, kind of redirecting it as oh, I just need to get used to it or something. And I try to pause there a little bit in the conversations and say, actually what you said, makes a lot of sense. That's really silly to do it that way. And I find it sometimes opens the conversation a little bit, to talk about it a little bit more and kind of get it out there, and even try to constructively make some ideas for how to change it too. So there's a lot of mentions of the difficult topic of that, kind of familial and even assault, a sexual assault. And I don't want to dance around the topic uncomfortably and make it a taboo. I can say from my perspective, every meaningful relationship I've had in my life, that person has had a story of some kind of sexual harm. And that was when I learned, I don't care about statistics anymore. This is so widespread and a common experience that, I'm just always going to advocate, against some statistic that says it's rare, or even if it happens, it's not a big deal. I really hope as a society we've moved past those ideas.
Yeah, I would also add to that that from the clinical pathology standpoint, it does come across as minimizing. And what they're often saying when they say serious mental illness is to the place where this person is unable to maintain a job, they're hospitalized repeatedly, etc. And that isn't the majority of the population, but it doesn't mean it's not life impacting on a daily basis and also affects everyone around that person. And so the way that that was written does minimize, but it doesn't really acknowledge the all that huge margin in between. I end up in the hospital several times per year and attempt suicide and like all these signs that I can't cope, and and I'm fine and maybe had an adjustment disorder when I moved out of my house as a child or something, like, which would be like the minimum kind of idea of a temporary mental illness. There's a huge percentile there of what that could look like that they were making it look like, well, it's not a big deal because we don't see it in our hospital systems, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, for it to need to escalate to the level of hospitalization to finally be recognized as like enough emotional pain to require treatment, is kind of like almost a crisis in and of itself, because as Tom showed in the chapter, he's a completely normal, like, functioning, outwardly presenting, functioning member of society, but yet in enormous pain and also causing pain in his household because of that mental anguish. And like, that's why I think these group discussions are so important, because I just hope there's some ripple effects to, reaching, one more person out there that doesn't feel deserving of assistance when they have an invisible wound that could use treatment, maybe use a little bit of help. And yeah, it looks like we got KT up on the board too. Yeah, go ahead, KT.
Well, I had a different thought, but I want to piggyback off this one first. A new story that is breaking out of the DNA research is there's a lot of incest being discovered there, that people didn't really know much about, and it's turning up in a statistically significant way. And I think we'll hear more about that story the more people are participating. Now, a lot of people naturally will keep that information to themselves. Gracie's here. My dog's here grumbling at me to pet her. But this is something that I think that's going to shine more of a light on the whole issue of incest and that sort of thing. What I was struck by was the amount of self-medicating that the soldiers did, and that they discover other people have done since. And it's not always from alcohol or drugs. Sometimes it's workaholics, shopaholics, different ways that we distract ourselves, from the pain that they're trying to deal with, try and stuff it down. And so it's possible some of your highest producing people are actually, the kind that work late at night, leave the office late, come in early, that kind of thing may actually be people who are self-medicating, because if they got quiet, they wouldn't be able to deal with that kind of pain. And yes, Gracie, on a more personal note, last night I had just a little bit of a meltdown. I was cleaning up after supper, and it was a bigger deal than I thought. And I just got frustrated with my cast iron skillet getting so scorched that it's going to have to be reseasoned, and all the mess on the on the stove that had to be cleaned. And my husband said, well, look, I'll take care of that. Don't worry about it. And so I just grabbed some water and went back to my office and sat down and realized I was real dehydrated. I drank that water really, really fast. And I realized I had been working all day long. I hadn't been taking care of myself. And I left myself vulnerable to those feelings surfacing. And so I think we need to, when things seems to be getting away from us, we should maybe pay attention and say, okay, what have I forgotten to do to take care of myself? Or what is trying to bubble up? And I had another situation going on in my life where about a couple of years ago, I was really deeply betrayed by a couple of people. And one of them was in somebody that was, was very dear to me, just tore me up one side down the other in a whole slew of texts and emails and this sort of thing. And I had to draw a boundary line. And then in a week or so ago, a friend also did something not nearly as bad, but insulted me a little bit in a group text. And I was struggling with trying to deal with it. And I realized, well, this is something that ordinarily, 4, 5, 6 years ago, I would have dealt with no problem. I would have said, to the friend, hey, that bothered me. I really don't appreciate that, or whatever. Just a low key talk to him, get past it. But I realized I was reacting to the betrayal from a couple of years ago, and that was kind of muddying up what I was dealing with. And I had to step back and say, okay, I need to process all these emotions, and then tangle out what's actually due to this minor situation here. So I guess what I'm trying to say is be alert to symptoms of needing to deal with this stuff, needing to take care of yourself. That what is happening now, the upset that's happening now, is not necessarily due to what's physically happening now. It may be a big ghost of something that happened, in the past. And that's why I was thinking of all those veterans. They would drink and do drugs, and when they came back, they might have stopped the drugs or something like that, but they would have been extremely good workers, very driven. And it's the same thing. It was the same thing. They didn't recognize, nobody helped them recognize. People, minimized what they felt. And so they thought, I'm left alone, I have to deal with this. And so they just, would bury themselves in something distracting. And it could be positive, in terms of being very productive. But that doesn't mean it's good for the person, Anyway, I'll stop for now and let somebody else talk.
No, those are really wonderful points. And one of the ones that I really would like to thank you for was the dehydration example. Like, I was having real struggles thinking of that taking care of the body component in terms of trauma, and it sort of reminded me of something I'm trying to practice is when I get irritated, which this is a nice timely topic because we just had the music hop yesterday with Mary, where the theme was songs that are about irritation. And the feeling of irritation can sometimes be a signal, to yourself. And I'm starting to instead of just acting out the irritation like I normally do by habit, I try to pause and say, this doesn't feel like something I should be this worked up about. What is happening right now? And just notice, you've been working hard all day, things are not going well. You forgot to drink some water. It's not 100% all about the water, but that's like part of it, right? So stopping and pausing and thinking like, why don't I get like a big, nice big drink of water? That's like the start, you've broke the chain reaction. And, that's such a wonderful example that you painted. Yeah, and also extending some comfort to your doggy. I noticed your dog had some feelings that they wanted some reassurance. So like even some moments there too. Love knowing that your dog's next to you.
Yeah, nothing like having a big dog or an animal of any sort, to make you feel loved.
Yeah, dogs are so mindful. Like, some of the science that Dr. Van der Kolk describes is that when you're describing like something traumatic that happened, your brain actually shows the signs that the trauma is like happening in that moment. Like just the active description like sort of brings you back to a trauma state, and maybe your dog recognized as you were describing the realization that the pan was now wrecked and stuff, like your dog might have noticed like, oh, my owner's got this like energy suddenly that I know so came over to give you a boop.
And if nobody else is on there, I wanted to mention other kinds of trauma. Like one that came to my mind and going through the first chapter is medical trauma. People can go through a trauma in medical treatments, as a child or as a grown-up. And so there are lots of traumas, not necessarily sexually related or war related. There are other very legitimate reasons to have had trauma. And medical trauma, my body definitely remembers.
Right, because that's literal, like physicality. And I had a little bit of surgery yesterday, and I had some pokes and prods that, were really uncomfortable. And like, I'll just say it right now. If I'm ever being tortured for information, I'm given that information like the moment it starts. Don't ever give me government secrets, because they're gone as soon as they pull the pliers out. Like ow. I remember how much that hurt.
I want to imagine if you were 4.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, what was that?
What I said was, imagine if you were 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, before you have any tools to really make any sense of like what's happening. And if you have a neglectful parent that doesn't understand, like, I need to bring this child back from this experience, like, just go to your room until, you've figured it out. And that, can stack on top of what's happened. So it's,
or worse.
Yeah, these are big deals. Oh, gosh. Yeah, these are not small things, but our society can make us feel like they are, like they're not deserving of attention or retention or memory. Medical trauma, I had not thought of that one. That's a great one to put on the board. Surgeries, misdiagnoses, being told you have something that you don't for half your life.
Or vice versa.
Yeah. And, I don't see any hands on the board, but that's okay because we don't, pressure for any kind of comments. I just sort of like to pause to make sure there wasn't anything, held. And if the hand raise utility feels like intimidating in any way, please feel free to just, make a motion and go ahead and speak. We're a small group too, so we can handle anybody just speaking up. But yeah, if that kind of wraps up our topic for this week, all good for me. Going once. Okay, good. Yeah, this was such a wonderful, like, little diagnosis of the first chapter. I really enjoyed the points everybody brought up. It was so nice to do a deep dive. I've read this chapter before, but not quite in this way. And this was a really nice way to, like, receive it. And yeah, so thanks for the opportunity for that. And we'll be back next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for the chapter 2, and kind of see where that takes us. I'll put our voices back on normal here so we can mingle.